I'm Colonel Walcott, Lecturer 2 attached to the Cyril Potter College of Education, Turkine Campus, in the English and Modern Languages Department, and I lecture in the following areas: linguistics, poetry, prose, fiction, Spanish and Portuguese, also CSEC, novels and plays, then the teaching of poetry, the teaching of prose, and the teaching of novels and plays, and as well as teaching of grammar. Welcome to Introduction to Linguistics. This is a course for Year 1 students, Semester 1, that is offered to all teacher candidates studying at the Cyril Potter College of Education across all campuses. This course is scheduled for 3 hours per week. There is 1 hour face-to-face session via your Google Classroom, and then there will be 2 hours for self-study where the teacher candidates will read all course material provided on the Moodle platform. Now, what would you consider to be linguistics? I know it's a course where you've never heard this name before. You haven't seen anything concerning linguistics. Now, what this course does is that it allows you to, gather descriptive and factual data so that you can analyze the teaching of language arts. And also, it allows you to generate success so that you have a working knowledge of linguistics. So therefore, what it does is that it functions as a base for the teacher candidates who wish to expand their knowledge in linguistics. Now, what does that mean? It means that you're at the Cyril Potter College of Education, but when you started this course, you kind of find it something that you want to continue. So you use the Introduction to Linguistics, as the name suggests, and you will go into other modules that will take you further into the course. In addition, linguistics also helps teacher candidates not only to be equipped with informed teaching strategies, but it allows the teachers to understand the dynamics of language as it relates to the Guyanese linguistics context. Now, you might want to ask yourselves, why is there so much emphasis on Guyanese linguistics context? Now, this is extremely important because, in several places, language is used differently. And with English, for example, you have to understand how English works in your country, in your society, in your home. So therefore, the Guyanese linguistics context aspect of this tells you that it has to be related to what we know. Now, when you come to do phonology and sociolinguistics that are part of the whole linguistics program, you will realize why we're saying that it's in the Guyanese linguistics context. So this comes further down in the course, and so you will be able to relate to it in a better way. Also, we have the idea that linguistically informed teachers would be crucial to those involved in the language learning process, because one of the implications is that you are aware of all the linguistics principles. Therefore, you are able to now apply those to your classrooms, especially if you're teaching languages. Now, let's look at methods of delivery. How do we actually get this course over to you? If you look at all the methods there, you will find that there's a variety of ways. So you don't come to the linguistics classroom and expect that the lecturer is going to be doing all of the work. Look at the list that is there. You have lectures, you have research, you have debates, dramatization, coursework, PowerPoint presentation, not coursework, group work. You have graphic organizers, and if you look at all of them, you would realize that you play a very significant part in what is happening with this course. Now, let me ask you this. How many times do you think you can sit through a lecture and play no part, especially in a course like this? Now, this is essential. These kinds of deliveries, would be essential because linguistics is not something you just read the modules or you read the course notes and you're okay. You're just trying to pass an exam. It doesn't work like that. The more involved you become, the better is it for you to eventually apply those concepts that you know about linguistics to active classroom work and to active situations. Now, what are the course objectives? Now, look at those. You will see there are actually 4 course objectives. Now, meaning that this is the broad objectives. This is what we want you to know or what we want to happen at the end of the course. So you will find that, look at the last 2, for example. Discuss principles of linguistic teaching to the learning process. So, like I said earlier, when you're in the classroom, what you learn in this course is going to inform what you do with your learners. And then the last one says, develop programs and methods for effective use of linguistics principles. You have a learner there. And let's just take this one to the wind. This child doesn't know how to speak in standard English, but because you were able to be exposed to what happens, some of the principles in linguistics, you are now developing, effective strategies to deal with that student who eventually probably will learn the standard language and you don't shut them down while they're, trying to use their Creoles. So these are the objectives. What you will find, though, is that once you go through these general objectives, every module has its own specific objective that will lead to what is happening at the end of the program. Now let's talk about something that nobody likes, assessments. From the time people hear assessments, they're kind of like, what? Oh boy. But what I want to tell you is that the course, first of all, is an examinable course. Now, when we say examinable course at the college, we're talking about the final exam. So this is one of the courses that has a final exam. Now, the final exam is the last assessment, but then you have 3 other coursework assessment. Now, let's take a look at those. You have your individual assessment, you have a group assessment, and you have a final coursework test. Now, I want to look a little bit at the group assessment. Now, we've noticed that there's always a circumstance or always a situation that would not permit you, let's say, for example, to complete or to be part of the group to do the group assessment. Now, we want to encourage you that if you miss a group assessment, don't attempt to do that assessment by yourself, then call the lecturer, oh, miss, I was sick and I didn't get to go in a group and I decided to do the assessment. You cannot and you should never, under any circumstances, try to do a group assessment on your own without the go-ahead from your tutor. That's what it is, a group assessment. And when we plan these group assessments, they have different components. So if we put you in groups of 5, it means that every student has to be a part of that assessment. So if you're going to do it by yourself, then you're doing you're taking one person to do 5 other persons' job, which is not supposed to be. So when you come to us, we explain to you that, well, okay, you can look at X or you can look at Y and we grade you concerning that. And one other note, group assessment is a group assessment. So even though we are grading you as a group, just note that the individual members of the group will be assessed and then that group will get a final score. So if you have a weak member in your group, I'm very sorry, that weak member can pull the entire group's work and give it a low score. Pull it down and give it a low score. So you have to make sure that as group members, you work together to complete a really excellent, assessment as a group. So that's where we find the problem with the group assessment. Individual, no problem. So that being said, you will notice that both sets of work basically total. So the coursework is 100. The final exam is 100. Now, here's the thing. You must pass both pieces with 55% average. Don't ever forget that. Because once you don't pass the coursework, you don't write the final exam. So you have to pass coursework to be allowed to write the final exam. And when you do write the final exam, you must have an average of 55% to say, well, hey, I made it. Now, I'm kind of excited at this point because we've had students who cried bitterly when they realized that they did not pass linguistics. I'll tell you this with no hesitation or whatever. It's one of the most challenging courses. Listen to me, I'm not saying difficult. I'm saying challenging because of how you approach this course. Many students come, oh, miss, we hear this thing hard. And so when you come with that, just imagine what the rest of your course will be like. So on this note, I just want to sound a clear bell that you must approach it, tell yourself that this is one of the challenges that you will overcome and you will get that 55% at the end. Great. So what is this thing made up of? There you have it. What is language? These are some of the areas. Well, of course, the subtopics are not included because remember I said that every module has its own objective. So you will find that as you get into the course, you're going to see that, under every subheading that you have or under every heading that you have here, there are one or two subheadings attached to them. All right, so when we look at this, we see some interesting things there. What is language? What are the characteristics of language? You have linguistics and the branches of linguistics. So that already should tell you something, right? Phonology, now that's a word I know that the early childhood people and probably the primary people will hear about phonology or phonics. Well, this is where you will get, it gets really interesting and we see how well you can maneuver these aspects of linguistics. And there's something called phonological analysis and phonological processes. And so you will find that this is where the Guyanese context that we spoke about earlier is going to come into play. You have distinctive features of the phoneme, you have morphology, morphological analysis, you have introduction to syntax and semantics, pragmatics, sociolinguistics, and Creole studies. So it's quite an interesting package there when you look at the content of the course. And everything there is going to bring you back to what we spoke about, Guyanese linguistic context. All right? And on this note, I want to encourage you that this may look kind of overwhelming because most of the terms you might not have heard before. So what you need to do, it's good when you can just, if you look at the course content, you get yourself online. Well, that's easy now these days. You can go online, you can start reading, and you come with, something at the back here that you're eager to share with us. Right? So this is what the 15 weeks is all about. All right, so we're moving into, that was the course overview, what it is, what are the objectives, and, what are your assessments. So let's think about this. The first topic on your course outline is language. What is language? Now, that's an important question because if you remember what I said in the objective, that the knowledge that you gain from linguistics is going to inform you in the language arts classroom or language arts on the whole. So it tells me, therefore, and it should tell you, that to understand linguistics, we have to understand language. And these are the areas that we're looking at when it comes to understanding language. So why is language unique to humans? I mean, you can start thinking about that. Why they consider only humans use language? Question, do animals communicate? Of course, we know that. But there's a more important question later on that I want to ask you. And then we have what are the features of language. So we have concepts in language. Concepts meaning, what does language mean? Now, we have various definitions all over. But when we look at what Merriman Online Dictionary says, we find that it mentioned the words, it mentioned pronunciation, and it mentions combining words and pronunciation and understood by a community. You heard that? Combining words and pronunciation. It also says it's audible, articulate, and meaningful sound produced by action of the vocal organs. It means that it gotta come, vocal, you gotta hear it. Then look at what another definition says. A systemic means of communication, communicating ideas or feelings by the use of conventionalized signs, sounds, gesture, or markings having understood. Something is really common in these definitions because it says a systemic means systemic. So it's not any harum scarum thing you're putting together and call it language. Language is governed by a system. And that system might have to be the system of sounds, the system of meaning, whatever system, it governs language. So the conclusion of this is that linguists believe that language is essentially a human ability. And there is one definition, other definition than these two that you have, that tells us that it's a systemic approach that is only unique to human or unique to man. Now let's question that. Let's see why is it unique to man. Is animal language or animal communication considered language? Some of us might want to argue that maybe the dogs can communicate, the chimpanzee say things, or the monkey. And most importantly, some people feel that the parrot uses language, because if you teach a parrot to say good morning, you hear that parrot talking. And many of us have looked at Home Alone. Isn't that so? I think it's Home Alone 2, when the parrot was singing in the bathroom, and then when the bandits eventually got to the shed, and then he says, double or nothing. So we're thinking, okay, the parrot can talk. But let me ask you this question. Research in communication tells you that, they have some interesting capabilities. However, do we consider that to be language? They're communicating. Of course they are. But is it considered language? All right? Does this form of communication fulfill the dynamics of language? Which in a few we will talk about. But I want to share this particular example with you. I have a pet. This pet lives in my home, and I walk this pet every day. Let's say it's a dog, and I walk this dog every day, and at certain times of the day, I let this dog out to do its business, you know what I mean? And one day I was probably overwhelmed with something, and I forgot to take this dog for a walk, or I forgot to probably let it out to do its business. And the dog comes to me and starts whining. It starts circling me. It starts doing all kinds of things. It's communicating. But does the dog say, I need to use the bathroom? Of course not. You're in my class at the college and you really want to go. Are you going to come whining and circling me and doing all manner of things? You will say clearly, Miss, may I leave the class? I need to use the bathroom. So both of you have communicated, but what did one use and what did the other use? So we ask again, is animal communication considered language? So are we ready to answer that question? Is animal communication considered language? So we spoke just now about the features or the intricacies of language. So first of all, human language is non-instinctive and involuntary. Now, what does that mean? That simply tells you that we can choose if, when, and where we want to use language. If I choose not to talk to you today, that's about it. I don't want to talk to you. I'm at a funeral and I don't want to make too much noise. Everybody's going to turn to look at me. I'm not going to talk. So I choose when I want to use language. So that is one of the main features of language, that humans have the ability to choose where, when, and how, and if they want to use language. Look at this one. Language is creative. Now, note in front of this has human language is creative. Now, you've been ever asked to do, let's say, for example, an assignment. The same topic, but you're asked to do this assignment. Every student will come with their version of what the assignment should look like. And you hear your teachers or your tutors will tell you, oh, be creative. Yes, you can say it, you can do the same thing in various ways. That is what linguistics does. That is what language is. It allows you to expand. You can change it. You can say the same thing in a different way. The creative nature of language allows us not to speak in memorized chunks. Let's go back to the parrot. Hi, Jack. Good morning. Good morning. That's all the parrot knows. You could go to the parrot in the afternoon. Hi, Jack. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good morning. And he's going to tell you good morning at whatever time of the day. So he cannot say the same thing in different ways. Or let's take, for example, there's this cute couple. And this guy is dying to tell this girl how much he loves her. But, he's afraid to use the L word. Many of us are afraid to use that L word. So he says, Jane, you know what? I care for you. You are my world. I will die without you. But he's not using the L word. All of those things is Jack's way of telling the woman that he loves her. You understand? So that is what human language does. It allows us to be creative. The parrot would not tell you, I love you in several ways. He cannot think of finding another way to say that I love you. Or, come here. I want to tell you, come here. Especially a mother talking to her child. Come here. She's not going to always say, come here. And we know the different ways that mommy can tell the child to come here. And there might be a few adjectives involved. Well, you know what I mean when I say adjectives, right? So there might be a few adjectives involved in telling that child to come here. So when we think of language and we think of what the animal, how the way that they communicate, we know clearly, or we can see clearly that something might be, because those memorized chunks, they cannot go say it in different ways. And it brings to mind something that, I live in Guyana, my cousin lives in Barbados, and we both have dogs. So when my dog is excited, it will jump and bark and so on. Do you think my cousin who lives in Barbados, her dog is going to be excited in a different way? Probably lie on the floor and do nothing? Of course not. So that is one thing that tells you already that this communication cannot be language because it doesn't have that creative aspect to it. All right, here's another one. Humans have the ability of displacement. Now, displacement tells us that, okay, we can remember the past, we can plan for the future, we can dream, and we can lie. I love the last one. We can dream and we can lie. How are you doing today? You're like good. But here, you're like good. Does that sound as somebody who is good? Right? You're off a bit, but your words that you use probably don't match what you want to say. And here's another one. Your grandmother came home and, she came to visit and she noticed that you are dating this guy from Berbice. Sorry, Berbicians, no offense. But you're dating this guy from Berbice and she says, girl, Me husband was from Barbies. Girl, and if you know, this man has wake me up soon. And I got for day in the kitchen every morning at 4 o'clock. And if you know, when me don't cook this man food, this man is one beat me up. She ain't tell you don't marry the man, I know. But she's telling you her experience. So you now hearing about the past, and you, not me, by I ain't want no man from Barbies. You already canceled that because you would have heard about the past. So your plan for the future is totally different. Language is open-ended and variable. Now, what this tells you is that it's continually changing. And the way that it changes is it varies from person to person, community to community, and from place to place. Even from time to time. Let's just look at what these different variables suggest. Person to person. So, I'm Carlo, the girl. You are Mark, the boy. And I say, Mark, you know what? I'm feeling kind of tired today. Mark now wants to express the same tiredness. Girl, I beat. So that change from person to person and from, what I say to Mark might not be, Mark wants to tell me that he's tired, but he doesn't say that to me. When we think of community to community, and some of you love to do this. The person that comes from, let me change from Barbies now. The person that comes from Essequibo. And person comes to Georgetown to come to college. And you and that person, you're in the same classroom. And the girl say, girl, I gotta go home early because I got Bailey roti for my father. And you open your, what? Bailey roti? What's the... Oh, you mean I love the roti? Yeah. So you see the difference there? Because we change, we say things differently, and that is what allows it to be language. And like I told you earlier, my cousin dog in Barbados is going to bark different from my dog in Guyana. So that doesn't have that open-ended and variable nature to language. All right? And then this one is interesting. And time to time, it also... Think about your grandmother for a while. And, well, I want to say something, but I don't think I'll use that example. But your grandmother says, girl, when I was young, I used to proper fet. Fet? You face all screwed up. Fet? What you mean you don't understand fet? When you just go out and have a good time at the park. Oh, you mean you just go to dance? So you see, grandma time was fet. Now you time is dance. And even now when we look at it, think about the computer, for example. Pass the mouse for me. Mommy, no ratting in the house? Really? Mouse in these times talk about what? That thing that you maneuver on your computer, with your computer, whatever. So that tells you that it's open-ended. It might mean something then, but in this time, it probably means, when you talk about window, all the computer language are words that we know, but when we talk about window, we ain't talking about the window that we're going to look out from. We're talking about the window, whatever happens with the computer, that version of whatever you have, Windows 10, Windows 13. That's what we're talking about, being from time to time. It changes from time to time. And even now, some of those words that we used long ago, that you probably don't even find them in a dictionary. And the thing is, these older generation finds it harder to communicate with the younger generation because of the open-ended nature of language. All right? All right, the last one. It tells us that language is structured and rule-governed, and it's also systematic. Rule-governed. You got to write a sentence. You must make sure that your subject and verb agree. You must make sure that your pronoun and its antecedent agrees. A whole lot of things go into that whole idea of structured and rule govern. Now look at what it says there. It's made up of systems such as the lexical system, the grammatical system, and among others, which will be explored later. So you've had all of this information. I'm coming back to you with a question now. How will you answer that question, whether or not animals use language? Would you say yes, no, or maybe? What's your answer? Yes, no, or maybe? Do animals use language? You've heard so much. You've heard about what language is. You've heard about the features of language. You've heard about the difference between what the animals do and how people communicate. So what will your answer be? I'm waiting to see what you will say to me. How will you answer whether or not animals use language? You have a yes, you have a no, and you have a maybe. I am praying and I'm hoping that everybody say what? Do animals use language? No. Language is only unique to humans. And the features that we spoke about earlier make them unique. And so one of those features, because there's a question there, can you justify your choice? Of course you can justify your choice, because when you look at what language is and what are the features of language, you know that some of those things are not a part of language. So before I go, let's look at what we did so far. We talked about the course. We know how long the course goes for. We know what are some of the things you will encounter in this course. And you were also able to make a distinction about what animal communication is versus human use of language. So as I close, I am Colonel Walcott, attached to the Sarasota College of Education, lecturer in linguistics and all the other things I told you about. So just think about life and how challenging it could be. And you don't give up when you meet your challenges in life. You don't sit back and say, oh, I give up, I done fail. Think about it. Think about linguistics like that. It's a challenge, but if you keep at it, all will be well. Thank you.